Hello, everybody. It's meteorologist Jamie Singleton. Here is your daily weather map discussion for this Monday night, May the 18th, 2020. A serious situation developing. Already some flooding going on here just to the east of our upper level low. And I showed you initially here the water vapor. This is a really crazy looking enhancement, but it really does show you the flow of the atmosphere. And you've got this area of energy here that's now closed off into a low. And it's eventually going to be cut off, not just closed, but it'll be cut off from the jet stream, which is going way to the north of the system already. And as this dies down, it's getting more energy into it. It's going to kind of pick up this energy across Florida. They had a lot of rain and some gusty thunderstorm winds, over 40 to 50 miles per hour today in Florida. That's now off the coast of Miami. That's with that swirl there. This is Tropical Storm Arthur, which is expected to become extra tropical pretty soon, moving off to the northeast. So now we are looking, or more northeast rather. Now we're looking at the main thing in town, which is going to be this upper low. And notice that it's got a couple of spokes here in the darker colors that stick out from it. There's one, there's two, there's three. These are going to be individual spokes that may enhance rainfall across the southeast. They'll be hard to pinpoint on the modeling, but certainly the threat is there. Now already we do have several roads closed in Ohio. Lots of rain occurring here, up to 3 to 4 inches of rain through Michigan with some flooding there. So you can basically, as I told folks on Facebook and Twitter tonight, you can follow this low and follow where the flooding's at relative to the low. If you move the low down here, which is where it's going to go across the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, that would put your flooding through North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, possibly into West Virginia. We've also got some flooding going on, some flash flooding going on right now in the coal fields of Kentucky. So this is a big weather system. It's a big pattern, really, that the whole eastern United States is at least caught up in the flow around this. And so we're going to continue to see problems from this, unfortunately, in the coming days. It's going to be a long duration event, and we're going to look at a lot in the way of threats with this in terms of all types of flooding. The first part of flooding we're going to have to worry about is going to be just the usual spots flooding, what we call urban flooding, the low spots on the roadways that can't drain the water very effectively. And so you end up with problems out there when it rains hard enough for a longer period of time. It just has nowhere to drain, and the typical low spots flood. That's what we call urban flooding. That's what flood advisories and are put out for mainly, and special weather statements are put out for those from the local National Weather Service forecast offices. The second thing we're going to have to worry about will be flash flooding, and that's what we're seeing right now with these thunderstorms in Kentucky and going into southern Ohio. This is where it's just pouring down rain and where you can see flash flooding and mudslides, things of that nature. It occurs in a real quick hurry. A lot of areas that end up getting the maximum rainfall on a forecast model that, are showing 12 inches. It's because of the thunderstorms that are expected to develop within the light to moderate rain or just on their own. And then finally, the river flooding is going to be an issue here. We're going to be looking at that as the week progresses because initially the ground's fairly dry in a lot of these areas, but especially in Virginia and North Carolina. But in the next 24 to 48 hours, the ground will be saturated, and we got another day or two of rain on top of that. That's going to add to the river flooding. So rivers could be cresting into the weekend with this pattern. We've got a stationary front. This was the cool air wedge that was over the area today, helped out by Arthur here off the coast. There you see the symbol there. So you had a northeast wind coming in, and that has been banking up the stable, cool layer of I'm listening to it rain right outside. Sorry, I just got it's the first moderate rain we've been getting, and I'm broadcasting right here. But very cool, stable area of air came in and just banked up against the mountains today. But now we're starting to get the influence of the upper level bringing in the energy. And what I'm really worried about down here is all this heavier rain around the Charlotte area, east of Charlotte, down through South Carolina, into the upstate of South Carolina. Look at all the lightning here through Augusta to Columbia. And I'll put this in motion over the past 6 hours. It gives you an idea of what's going on. We'll take the wind off there. It won't make it too busy. We had severe storms earlier in Kentucky where a tornado watch was in effect. But you can see that we've got numerous swirls here. And again, the upper level system is still way up here where we had some cold air funnels today through Illinois because the air was just that unstable. They don't reach the ground because they're really high up in the atmosphere. But you can get that underneath an upper low. But you've got more rain that continues developing, and that's going to be the issue here. It's going to continue developing day after day after day. And so you may not be getting rain at a certain point through the next 4 or 5 days, but you are going to start to see waves of heavy rain and thunderstorms with torrential downpours developing. Notice how as the activity moves closer to Virginia, it does die out, although just in the past couple of hours and as I'm hearing out my window, things are beginning to pick up out there. You got some yellows and reds showing up on the reflectivity here. So getting some bigger rain. And again, the problem may be that we develop these areas like you're seeing in South Carolina right now with all this lightning. It's almost like a train of moisture. So we call these fire hoses that develop. And as this low cuts off, we're going to continue to watch that potential there for that flash flooding threat with what we call the fire hose. Now, over the past 24 hours, this is how much rain we have had. I'll take off the national radar there. Some areas have had over 2 inches of rain in South Carolina and right at 2 inches of rain in the North Carolina mountains already. And so by tomorrow morning, we could be looking at upwards of 4 inches of rain in through here, and we're already adding to those rain totals even as we speak. The excessive rainfall outlook, I'll show you day 1 here. This is actually day 2 now, but where you see any of the shades of color here through the green, that's a slight area of excessive rainfall and flooding. And then if you look at the yellow, that's where we see a elevated, more of a moderate risk, and then a higher risk here coming up in the orange area. So this is for 8 a.m. Tuesday going through 8 a.m. Wednesday. And that includes the mountains, southwest mountains here. Basically, if you follow the Blue Ridge Parkway all the way down to Asheville and even the mountains here that separate right on the border here in North and South Carolina, that's where the upslope is going to be maximized because you're bringing in wind from the southeast and banking it right up against the mountains. Now I'm going to show you, everywhere in these areas are probably going to see at least some type of flooding, a highest amount of flooding, in terms of not only severity, but concentration will be in that orange area. Day 3 now, going Wednesday and a Thursday, it's right over the same areas. So again, this just sits here, and unfortunately, it's going to be a huge problem in the coming days. So let me show you a few things here. I do want to show you that we have, let's see, let me get to where I want to go. Yes, this is it. Over the past 2 months, we have seen a lot of rain. If you just look at the past 2 months here, and that includes April, to as much as 500% of normal. So deeper down in the ground, it's still saturated, but in the recent couple of weeks, it's actually dried up. If you look at a 14-day period, percentage of normal, it's way dry. It's only at about 20 to 35% of normal, and some areas here have seen a little more rain. Bath County, Virginia, in other words, had some flash flooding. But overall, in these red areas here, this is where the ground can take a little rain for right now. But unfortunately, these areas showing up in the brown here and getting into the green almost in South Carolina, that's where the ground is already starting to saturate. And for that reason, the National Weather Service has already multiple, I should have stacked this show better, multiple flood watches in effect, there we go, through Southwest Virginia into western North Carolina. Flash flood warnings again in Kentucky. This is a large flash flood watch in effect here. This is going to expand, I'm sure, as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday. This is just the initial area that's going to saturate first, okay? And then the rest of the area that's been a little drier will take a little longer to saturate, and also the placement of the heavier rain will expand as well. So the National Weather Service will be more than likely issuing new flood watches that cover a larger area. This one already goes into effect. It covers all of western North Carolina into southwest Virginia through Thursday morning. But again, we may have to worry about Friday as well. Deeper humidity, deeper moisture is where you can really get most of your heavier rainfall. So if I back it up here to where we're at right now, this is off the GFS model, and there again is Arthur. We're not going to worry about Arthur. We have just our own moisture here. Just a large trail of it here, of very deep moisture. That's why they're seeing the flooding in Ohio right now. There are all kinds of ways to look at this system, but I'm going to show you a few of the technical ways for you on the YouTube channel here. Going into Tuesday, you see that conveyor belt of moisture, the initial one, starts in North Carolina. It's down across, the Carolinas going into West Virginia. But as the low moves south, this moisture will orient more east to west in the Tuesday. So you see the orientation change. You also see it move slightly to the north. So that means the areas in Virginia, that's why it's starting to rain hard out my window, are going to be getting in on some of this heavier rainfall during the early morning hours of Tuesday and through the day on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday afternoon, there could be a lull. You see that little lightened area right there? That's just indicative of where the model will put the exact placement of the moisture. This could change, but the pattern should be there. In other words, you may see one wave of deep moisture go through and a lot of rain, only to let up for a couple of hours, and then it's going to redevelop as that low just sits there. So this is just to show you an example of just one model run. This could change, but the pattern again will be there. Wednesday now, you've got new areas, and again, this is going to be developing over your head more than likely. So if you look at a radar, you say, okay, there's not much upstream. It's important to look at that radar in motion, and it's important to realize if you take your eyes off that radar, whatever app you're using or whatever you're looking at, know that an hour later, in some cases a matter of minutes, the new thunderstorms and new showers could be developing out of thin air. They have to develop somewhere, and in this case they'll be developing all across the mid-Atlantic and then moving in from the southeast, actually coming up for Wednesday. There is drier air to the north, and I'm optimistic that some of that will work its way down into central Virginia, Stanton, I-64, that area, and areas to the north, maybe not getting quite as much rain. There'll be a sharp edge more than likely, and there's going to be some dry slot probably try to work itself into this upper low. But that will only make for sunnier breaks in the afternoons as we get into Thursday and Friday, and that may fuel additional heavier storms. Wednesday evening into Thursday, you see it just being wrung out here. The highs to the north, it moves east, and this conveyor belt moves a little bit more to the north and east, but the low itself remains parked and starts to maybe lift out a bit for Friday, but you still have some moisture around that circulation that could develop even into the first part of the weekend. If you look at it on a where's the spin, where's the vorticity, I just want to show you the GFS here. And you see that one southern system that produced the rain in Florida get wrapped into, part of it gets wrapped back into this low. Watch the direction of the low. Doesn't move east, does it? It's going south across Tennessee. Once it gets to Tennessee, it hits the brakes. That's just, the models are measuring the momentum here and the velocity and how the air is stacking up north of here too, and it's keeping it there. It does start to lift north finally on the backside as this blocking high moves east. It starts to lift north back into Ohio here coming up for Friday and Saturday, but that would still put Virginia and North Carolina in a southwest to south flow here around this thing, enough for some scattered showers and thunderstorms. I think this is really cool to look at. You can see the basically where the tropopause is, where the edge of our lowest layer of the atmosphere is, and it tends to show the same thing, but a different way of looking at it, okay? And so we're using different mathematical equations to look at basically what I just showed you, but it's a lot smoother, and it's easier to visualize. So you can see that ridge building here at bubble right there across the Great Lakes of red, but it's easy to find that upper level low. And the lobes of energy that rotate around it like spokes on a bicycle wheel. As each one of these lobes move through your area, it will enhance the severe weather threat because we're going to see that as well, but it also will enhance the heavier rainfall as well. I'm looking at the radar tonight across the upstate, and you can see areas of storms through Spartanburg and Greenville, and this is recorded, so it won't be live, but just to give you the idea Heavier rain continues just about everywhere. It's starting to fill in across Virginia now, as we're seeing not only the rain from the upper level low, but we're generating our own rain as winds are coming in out of the southeast. And that'll be a problem for upslope areas along the Blue Ridge as we move into the rest of the week. Now, here it is on height anomalies. It really shows, if you look at it this way, it really shows that blocking ridge. That's why this low can't move. It gets sandwiched underneath here, and that's what we call a Rex block that sets up here Wednesday, Thursday, and starts to finally lift out a bit for Friday. Although it's still got some height anomalies there, higher than normal around it here Friday evening and the Saturday. So even though it exits, it may be slow to exit. Finally, it looks like Saturday afternoon, if the Euro is correct, we may get into a drier pattern. But until then, this does not want to go anywhere, and we'll continue to see the rainfall. We can simulate the water vapor for you, and the higher cloud tops here showing up in the yellow. So this is tonight. This is tomorrow morning. Southwest Virginia, Central Virginia, West Virginia, much of North Carolina will be in the zone here. And you can see the dry slot tries to work itself in for Wednesday, but within the dry slot, you get new convection that develops, and that's what's showing up there in the yellow. That'll pinwheel around this thing for Wednesday. There may be a fire hose of very heavy storms that train over the same area, and honestly, that would be a devastating flash flooding event for somebody. Okay, we're talking about life-threatening flash flooding here coming up for somebody in the Mid-Atlantic. Where exactly that happens is, up to just where the individual storms form. We just know the patterns there, and our models are getting somewhat better. But we can never pinpoint county by county which city's going to see exactly where these bands are going to form and where they're going to see the worst flooding. So we just know across a good part of the area that's where we're expecting it. It does look like there'll be another sharp front or wave here coming into Thursday now. And it was looking like just light rain to moderate rain all four of these days rather, but looks like Thursday could be one of those grand finale type things where we see a main shortwave rotate around here, negatively tilted, and a lot of thunderstorm and heavier rain activity in there. Something to watch, but honestly, any day this week through Friday is going to bear watching for that same thing. Friday and the Saturday, again, there's the drier air working in, and the low starts to fill in a bit. Probabilities. This is a neat way to look at rainfall potential because I have shared the exact deterministic rainfall amounts off the models. What I'm showing you now is a blend of several short-range ensemble models that would show the chance of seeing 4-inch or more rainfall. So this is not looking at rainfall numbers exactly. It's looking at where is the best chance of seeing 4+ inches of rain. And we don't really see a lot here coming up for Tuesday. But as we go into Wednesday, we do see the probabilities going way up here Wednesday into Thursday for more than 4 inches of rain. And this is accumulated. So areas in these brighter colors here have the best chance of seeing the heaviest rain. And that's right against the Blue Ridge Parkway, Floyd, Franklin counties, Roanoke County in Virginia, Craig County, even in the Henry County, Virginia, New River Valley, Montgomery County, Galax, Carroll County, Stewart and Patrick County, and then northwest North Carolina, especially from Boone in the Mount Airy and Sparta. That area down to Asheville, North Carolina could get hammered with up to a foot of rainfall. One thing that aids rain is the wind below all of that at 5,000 feet. And when it comes in like this off the ocean, we're getting Atlantic moisture being drawn into the system. This is valid tomorrow morning. So already the rain in Virginia is being caused by the Atlantic moisture, but you've also aloft, above where this map sees, you've got air coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. The values of wind are going to also increase up to 45 knots here coming up in the West Virginia mountains. So the wind may be an issue for the mountainous areas. Notice as the high puts the squeeze play on, the wind increases at 5,000 feet coming in out of the east. And the problem is the mountains are right through here. So it's going to go right against the mountains. That air hits it, can't go down to the ground, so it goes up against the mountains, and you get the upslope effect here for Wednesday. And then the corridor of the converging winds now shifts into Virginia here coming up for Thursday. Again, I'm very concerned about Thursday, but all days bear watching. And then finally by Friday night, we've got a westerly component here. And that's not a totally dry direction, but it sure beats that southeast wind slamming into the mountains kind of thing. Euro ensembles, so not just looking at the euro, I'm looking at several different runs, 51 to be exact of the euro, and a blend of all of that. So this is precip through tomorrow morning. And I know it looks bad here, but we're looking at a half an inch in yellow and an inch where you see the red. So, and half an inch to an inch across a good part of the area with the mountains of North Carolina, possibly over 2 inches by Tuesday morning, by the time you may be watching this. And then going through the day Tuesday, we've got another few inches that fall across a good part of the area. You see where the bullseye's at, though. Amounts here getting over 4 to 4.5 inches in western North Carolina accumulated. And then as we go through Wednesday, notice the 4.5 inch there in purple begins to expand into Roanoke and Southside Virginia. Upstate of South Carolina gets in on this. Georgia gets some heavy rain. That it continues through Tennessee, even in Kentucky. There's going to be a lot of isolated flash flood warnings out for this. And there will be numerous flood warnings and flood advisories out, I'm sure. And then as we advance it even more, you've got Thursday with that main surge coming through that really adds the gray to the map here. And the gray is 5 inches. The darker gray is 7 to 8 to 10 inches. That's going to be in northwest North Carolina. And again, this is an ensemble. This is a blend. This isn't deterministic. Those values are even higher. But when you blend them all together, this is what you get. So I had somebody comment today and say, hey, that's just one model run, right? Well, they've been very consistent on this area right here, getting the worst of it through southern Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina. And they've also been, depending on what model you look at, pretty similar in terms of numbers and unfortunately the placement of the rain. So through the weekend, through Saturday now, you've got amounts that are getting up around 10 to 20 inches. And I'm not exaggerating that. That's right there on the scale. I do have that cropped. Let me see if I can uncrop it and show you. There you go. Those numbers are there because that's what you're seeing in western North Carolina. So that is a huge problem. Mudslides, everything, rock slides that we normally see in a situation like this on the table. Significant flooding from the Blacksburg Weather Service office, and the Weather Prediction Center has their numbers out as well. This is the official forecasting agency. They put all the models together, and they're experts at this. This is what they do. They also work with the local National Weather Service forecast offices in putting out advisories on where they think the heaviest rainfall is going to be. Kind of like the Storm Prediction Center, but just for weather and rain. And you can see they've got values from Lynchburg at 3.8 to 5.9. Now, this is through the week, but still gives you an idea. 5.4 here around Galax, 4.7 Greensboro, 6.9 Hickory. But again, I would refer you to the mountain slopes where values are even higher. And if you were to look at the scale, you would see those values there are up around 15 inches, 12 to 15 inches. So and that's the official Weather Prediction Center forecast. Front-wise, this is how it looks, and you just don't see a lot of movement here. At the surface, this is what will be happening underneath the upper low. So we know the upper low's not moving. Where are our fronts? Our fronts will be occluding, basically, as the cool air wedge is established over Virginia, and you've got the warm, buoyant air being lifted up and over that cooler air. So the red area is actually in the cool air, but it's because of elevated thunderstorms. And those are going to be something to watch because within a thunderstorm, even if it's elevated, meaning it doesn't have a connection to the surface in terms of its instability, it can still put down torrential downpours. And it's the torrential downpours that are going to do the number on the flash flooding. That's going to be what maybe sets some areas over the edge here. Wednesday morning. So we go through tomorrow and Wednesday, and there is no movement. You've got this huge high here sitting over Maine, and it doesn't want to give right now. So it will not move east until probably Friday. And notice when the high moves east, we finally start to see the rain shift. Although it's going to take a good part of Friday to do that. So there'll still be some rain here Friday, and some heavier thunderstorms, no doubt. Even isolated activity on Saturday before finally clearing out for Sunday. But then we got another system out here to watch for next week, although hopefully that one won't close off the way this one is. It's a serious situation. And finally, for the tech geeks out there, the meteorologist geeks, here is a look at the temperatures. I believe it's 700 millibars. When you drive colder air into a system, it tends to close off, and that's why that low, one of the reasons why it's closing off. This is another look at, and this is off of SIMU AWEBs. You can sign up for this, but this is the jet stream, and let me shrink this down where you can see it. But it's way up in Canada, around the Hudson Bay, so this system has its own jet stream, and it is just not going to be part of the main jet stream. That's why that little ribbon right there cuts off, and it just sits. It's got its own jet stream, and it is not going to be moving. Water vapor also again shows a plume of moisture there coming out of the south. And then we've also got some instability up around the wedge, which is slowly eroding in southwest Virginia into the Carolinas. That's why we're seeing those embedded storms, and that'll be something to watch there as well. And finally, the relative humidity at the mid-levels, very impressive. Notice the dry air, it's trying to work in. This is actually off the Navy model, if you can believe that. That's just how accurate these models appear to be with this particular system. They're all in agreement. But you do get a surge of some drier air in here coming up. Let's see. It's trying to move in. It looks like right there. That's Wednesday morning. So, if this is stronger, there's theoretically a chance that could move more into Virginia. But right now, it looks like it's going to hold its own. That moisture, these are vectors, still filling in right there in the yellow and the darker yellow across Virginia. So Roanoke really takes it on the chin here through the rest of the week. And even the Carolinas here, you can see there. Looks like Roanoke's in, if you look at the Navy here, in more of the heavier moisture band for a longer period of time. Stay weather aware, have multiple ways to get warnings. I have more updates on this tomorrow.